Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today, Living Beyond Your Diagnosis with Dr. Elisabeth Saxton. Dr. Saxton, thank you very much for coming on today. And I will let you introduce yourself.
Thanks, Sharon. So I want to say a huge thank you for being invited to do this. My role is National Director of Mental Health Services for CBI Health, which is a huge rehabilitation company across Canada. I am a clinical psychologist by background, and I have been working with chronic illness, chronic pain since about 2004 when I fell in love, when I was working in Edmonton, I fell in love with working on an interdisciplinary team. You learn about health psychology and stuff when you're in grad school, but you don't necessarily learn all the facets of how impactful it is and the role that psychology and mental health has to play until you see it in action. So once I got to taste of that, I was hooked. And then I've kept working on this. And now I do a lot of program development, opportunities to speak about it like this, and helping people have effective treatment, but also creating effective teams.
Great. Thank you very much. And we look forward to your presentation.
All right, well, I'm going to take over the screen and I won't be able to see the chat or anything, but Sharon has been kind enough to say that she will help me out and flag me down if at any point someone's got a question. I always invite people to be engaged and keeps me on my toes. Oopsies, I'm trying to, oopsies, this was not supposed to happen that way. My bad. Sorry, I'm not sure why it did that. There we go. There we go. All right. So we're going to be talking about living beyond your diagnosis. This is really multifaceted, and I want this to be about yourself because we know that there are some truths when it comes to chronic illness. We know that it takes a ton of resources, whether it's physical resources, it's mental resources, it's spiritual resources. There are so many things that just get taxed on all of our systems when we're living with a chronic illness. And managing it takes a lot of those resources. And using up a lot of those resources, such as neurotransmitters, can actually start to get associated with feeling anxious, depressed. We start burning out those different, we're basically emptying our gas tank. When that happens, the anxiety, the depression can kind of kick in. The other piece is we've lost something. We've lost something that maybe we felt like we can't do anymore, or we've lost who we used to be. And while that doesn't necessarily mean that we are worse off, it's a process. It's a process of adjustment. There can be grief and loss that we have to go through to get to the other side. And absolutely, you get to be frustrated. You get to feel misunderstood. You get to feel like nobody else gets this, especially when you're dealing with some of the more rare conditions. And ultimately, I want to say thank you for even showing up to this, because it means you're open. It means you're open to engaging and other options rather than just doing things like maybe you always have been. So here's my disclaimer. These are things that I will try very hard. Actually, I won't try. I will not say today that I know what you're going through. I don't. That's not something. I have, my mother-in-law has IPF and has been living with it for quite some time. So I have a sense, I've seen it. I don't know what it's like. I'm not going to tell you guys, don't focus on it. Don't focus on it. Like, just ignore that it's there. Pretend like it doesn't exist, because that's not realistic. I'm not going to say this. I know a lot of people get this one. Other people have it worse than you. You may even say that in your own head, like it could be worse. It could be worse. 100% I'm not going to say that to you. And just think positive. Yeah, you just be positive. Do gratitude every day. I mean, it's a great practice. It is not enough. And I'm not going to say that I can make it better. A huge misnomer for what I do is that I make people happy. I don't do that. That's not actually a thing. People have to do that on their own. What I am going to do is try to help you get to that space where you can find some of that for yourself, so that you can essentially recognize and really own that the symptoms and the experience you have emotionally, physically, that is a real part of your total experience. Your symptoms are going to vary and they're going to progress differently. So in a way, you don't know what's coming next. So it's really hard to have this attitude of like, well, I can cope with where I am now, knowing that it may change. And we don't know what that change is going to look like. Your experience is yours. It is completely unique. And this today is hopefully going to give you a taste of how you can make it about you. It isn't about everyone else around you. It isn't about the disease. It isn't about all of that. It is about you and how you are within all of that context. So what I'm going to be talking about today is a methodology called acceptance and commitment therapy. It's a psychological intervention that uses acceptance and mindfulness strategies together with commitment and behavior change to increase psychological flexibility. That is a very academic-y way of saying it's going to change how you walk into a situation and think that you can do it differently, or how you can be in your family or at work and figure out how to look at other options that might be available for you. It really looks at getting us to, instead of avoiding them, connecting with our thoughts and feelings, and then realizing that if we just kind of lean into that and we don't deny that they're there or try to run away from them, then we can end up making choices that really help us live a life that's based more on our values. So our values we're going to get into in a second, because often we forgot all about them in the process. And the goal is to have a psychological shift in how you see the world around you and how you interact with it, rather than it being about symptom reduction. Because symptom reduction is not something that necessarily is going to happen. It can, some of the symptoms may change and they may fluctuate, but ultimately it's giving you a bigger toolbox to be able to go through the world and take what you can from every situation, regardless if it's a good situation or a bad situation. And having that flexibility, and we know this, psychological flexibility is associated with increased resilience. It reduces depression, reduces anxiety, reduces trauma. Basically, you can lean into something and find ways to solve it. And even if it ends badly, it doesn't have the same impact. So we're not necessarily focusing on symptoms reducing, we're focusing on changing the way we interact. So you're going to hopefully take the person you are and the condition you have, not necessarily one is more important than the other, and then figuring out how that relationship is and how it impacts your life and changing how you interact with it. So one thing I see all the time when people have, whether it's physical pain, psychological pain, or psychological symptoms, is they just say, well, if I just don't do this and I don't do that and I don't do this, then I can avoid getting stressed out. I can avoid that. And the reality is that making you feel better, or is it just less distressed? And I'm going to give this as a shout out to any clinicians or clinical folks who might be watching, is your job is to help people do better and help people fulfill all the potential that they can and get where they want to go and be able to sustain that. Yet sometimes we get in this weird protective mode that someone says, well, that stresses me out, or I get really nervous, or I'm worried about this. And our response is just don't do it. Just don't do it. And if you just don't do it, yeah, you're right. You might be shortening the distress in the short term, but what you're really doing is making this bubble where you live life smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. So if it's too much work, or I'm worried, or I'm concerned that if I go out and what if my regulator goes, or what if the oxygen tank doesn't last? What if something happens? So I just don't go out anymore. That reduces one anxiety, but what is the cost of that? So is there a middle ground in way you can look at that? Because you will not find peace by avoiding life. So mindfulness, like I said, ACT uses a lot of mindfulness concepts. And I'm going to give you the definition. Mindfulness, the word that everybody's heard and everybody kind of knows what it's about, and you don't necessarily really know what it is. So this is the scientific definition of mindfulness when they research it. It is paying attention to the present moment on purpose without judgment. Paying attention in the present moment on purpose without judgment. So you'll notice that none of that says that you will feel better, you will feel relaxed. It doesn't say that you are going to come out enlightened or that you will have some kind of insight. All it says is that you need to pay attention to the present moment on purpose without judgment. Here's a couple things when people talk about doing mindfulness. I think we make it a lot more complicated. People often equate it to meditation. A lot of people have these expectations that you need to give yourself half an hour and you need to be calm and collected. You know what? You may not have half an hour in a day. You may have a lot going on. You may not be at home. You may be somewhere traveling and you may be in transit. So how do you do this if it takes half an hour? Similarly, people think that it has to be this quiet, you have to create a Zen environment, you have to create this milieu where you can be quiet, maybe with a mat and dim lighting, and it has to be this like musical background and there might be crystals and whatnot. No, you don't need any of that. Nor do you have to, you don't necessarily have to have any sort of environment or spiritual affiliation or whatnot. This is not hypnosis. Wow, I'm really looking at how the font changed on that one. You don't need to have some kind of spiritual belief system or tie yourself to yoga or other practices. This can be standing on its own. And it is not hypnosis or anything like that. It is something that you will do and you will fail at. You don't need to be good at this to be good at this. Like a lot of things, we have to be terrible at something so that we can get good at it. So it takes time and it takes practice. And to prove that you can do it anywhere, anytime, and it doesn't have to take a lot of time, I'm actually going to take you guys through a mindfulness exercise right now. The one that I'm going to do, I'm going to just think here. You know what? We're going to do the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And if we have time at the end, I can even show you guys another one. So the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 is really about paying attention with all 5 senses. And again, you're not going to be perfect at this. You're going to get distracted. You're going to have thoughts come in. You're going to hear sounds or whatnot. That's all okay. You are still doing it. You're still doing it great. You're doing a great job. It's about just paying attention. So if you have to redirect your attention, that's the process. So wherever you are, sitting, standing, laying down, you might be somewhere in public and sheepishly looking around and thinking, oh, she's going to ask me to do something really weird when I'm in the middle of Costco. It's all fine. No one needs to know you're doing this. You just need to basically stop what you're doing right now and then just start paying attention to your breath. Something that we should all be able to do. Maybe it's a little challenging. You might have the hose, you may have the oxygen flowing, whatever it might be, just taking a breath. And then I want you to look around the environment you're in. I want to, in your mind, name in your mind 5 things that you can see. Any 5 things in your space. And then just continuing to breathe. Now, I want you to think, and again, name in your mind 4 things that you can hear. You might have to strain a little. Maybe it's hard to just pick 4. Now I want you to notice 3 things that you can feel. So that can either be reaching out into the space around you and touching different objects, or not moving an inch and just noticing where your body is making contact. Maybe your legs are crossed. So where are your thighs meeting? Maybe your feet are connected to the floor. Maybe you can feel your toes in your shoes. Maybe your hands are in your lap crossed. So just 3 things that you can touch. And now, in your mind, just naming 2 things that you can smell. And lastly, just naming in your mind 1 thing that you can taste. And then just focusing back to that breath. Noticing that breath coming in and out. And that's it. You just did a mindfulness exercise. Again, didn't take a lot of time. You can do it with your eyes open, your eyes closed. You can be standing in a line. I was at Callaway Park, for anyone that might be in Calgary and you've been to Callaway Park. Anyway, I was stuck in not traffic. I was in the parking lot trying to leave for an hour and 40 minutes. An hour and 40 minutes, sitting in my car with my 6-year-old, hopped up on sugar in the back seat. And this is a great time to do mindfulness. So find that space, you deserve it. And a good question that we're going to kind of go into next is, if you think there's no way I can do this, there's no way I can do this. It's just not, no. Why not? Why not? So I want you to keep that in your mind. And if you couldn't find all those numbers of items, that's okay, because you were still doing the process of paying attention, even if you couldn't hear 4 different things, or you couldn't smell 2 different scents. That's okay. It's any combination you want of 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and just paying attention. So there is a you. That you is not your condition. It is not the diagnosis is now your new first name and last name. That is not it. You still have you. And what we need to recognize is that it becomes something that can overtake us. And when it overtakes us, it begins to call the shots. And when that happens, it starts changing the way we feel about ourselves. It changes the way we feel about the world and our family. And it changes the way we think about how we are and who we are. So in that moment, when you were doing the mindfulness practice, did you notice anything? Did you notice a feeling or a thought or an emotion or a belief or just discomfort? And what you did in sitting with that was, instead of running away from it, you actually just connect to it. So if you feel embarrassed because you have to now walk around with a hose, just saying, yeah, I'm embarrassed. That little idea of just sitting with it and letting those feelings happen changes how much control that has over you. So asking you guys to just say to yourselves, you can write it down if you want, in that practice and following it, now that we're connected to being present and here, what did you notice? A thought, a feeling, a sensation. Now here's the part that's kind of tricky. What you just did in noticing your feelings is there's a you that's noticing you noticing. Now, that sounds really abstract. You're noticing that you're noticing. So self as context is a little more complicated. It's sometimes the trickiest part to try and explain ACT to people. But what it is that there is a you that existed before this moment and is going to exist afterwards. That part of you will exist no matter before the diagnosis, after the diagnosis. All of those pieces exist at the same time. So what you're really saying is, I am a whole person. Let's imagine it kind of like a bowl. You are a bowl full of different people, places, times that have been in your life, experiences, successes, failures, friendships, anger, love, joy, all of those things. And all of them are true. They did not go away simply because you received a diagnosis. So you, the you that noticed that you're noticing this right now, is basically telling this whole story of who you were before and who you are now and who you're going to be. So what you do is you start to be able to say, like, I didn't lose the parts of me that were before I was diagnosed. They're just different, but they're still there. Maybe they fell behind. And if you think about it, we've been doing this our whole life. You know, we were all, I'll pick on something. I'm trying to think of something that most kids did, playing tag. And when you were a kid, there's a lot of us that probably loved playing tag, that loved running through a schoolyard and jumping on playground equipment and falling out of trees. And that part of you, you may not do those things anymore. I don't know the last time I was in a really wicked game of tag, but even though you don't do those things anymore, you can reflect on those experiences and recognize that they play into who you are. So you didn't lose that kid who liked to play tag. You didn't lose the kid who wants to play on the playground equipment or go to the park. You just maybe haven't really tapped into it for a long time. And there's definitely parts of that that still influence you today. Maybe if you are around your kids or your grandkids, maybe you're constantly telling them to go outside and play, go out inside and play. I loved going and doing that. You're encouraging them to get out in nature. All of that stuff is partially because of that person who you were when you were a kid, and you still own that part of you. It just isn't present in the same way. So you have a whole bowl of people, experiences, and life that you've lived before the diagnosis, and that bowl didn't get dumped out and replaced. We just, when a diagnosis happens, it kind of takes over. And we need to go, oh, wow, hey, I need to be the one who observes that I'm not paying attention to all of these other things. This is the control piece where you get to be in charge of where you're directing that attention. And you can access, hey, I can go back and go into the story that led me up to this place, and I can use that information to move forward. You can evaluate without judging them, because you get to have the negative stuff. You get to feel like, that was kind of mean to me, or that probably wasn't my best self. You get to do all that without judging yourself. So you get to evaluate your thoughts and experiences. That's you observing yourself. So the present you might be acting, but there's this other part of you who says, hey man, I know that's not who I am. I know that's not the me that I want to be. So be kind to yourself. Don't judge yourself so harshly. And to do that, we can do a lot of things to kind of change those thoughts. And like I said, mindfulness is all about paying attention. So the first thing we're going to do is start paying attention to those thoughts before we try and change them. So here's some of the things that I like to share with people that come up a lot, because I feel like it's pretty common, especially when people have a condition or they feel like they are impacting other people. And, maybe you're this positive person, you never had a down day. And after your diagnosis, now you have down days and you're feeling a little more bitter, or maybe you're a little jaded, find yourself more angry or irritable. And you probably say, well, I should do this and I should do that, and I should be more upbeat, and I should be happier. I should be thankful it's not worse. I should be hopeful. I should be doing more cleaning, even though now I get really tired. You just need to stop shoulding all over yourself. Because shoulds are very judgy. So when you say, I should be doing this and I should be doing that, evaluate, okay, why is that? Based on what? Based on what? I can tell you, I spent a lot of time shooting all over myself as a mom. I have a job that takes me away from home a lot. I know during COVID, it was very different. It does, though. It takes me away at least 1 to 2 weeks a month. And I have a 6-year-old son, and I remember thinking, I should not travel anymore. And a lot of people shared with me like, oh, you must be so excited now that you have a son, you're probably going to stop traveling, right? You're going to stop traveling. So I shouldn't travel anymore. I shouldn't travel anymore. I should want to just be home with my son all the time and working from home. And I should hopefully want to just stay at home with him because I should do that, because that's what good moms do. And the reality is, though, that's not me. And that's not me being a good mom. That's me denying myself something that is actually something I'm really good at, that allows me to do things that make me really good at my job and hopefully help people all over the place, which is what I want to teach my son. So maybe the shoulding, I should be doing this, that, or the other thing because that makes me a good mom, isn't really an accurate statement. It's how a lot of people might act if they were a mom or a parent. It isn't how I need to. So I had to let go of that shoulding. And now when I travel, my son always asks me questions like, Mom, show me the hotel room. Mom, show me what's outside the window. I bring my son on a lot of the trips. When I go to Vancouver, he knows the Hotel Vancouver so well that he will talk about like, oh, we've been in this room before, or we've been in this kind of room before. And he knows what's on the menu. And that is an experience that I would have denied him if I would have just said, no, I shouldn't travel anymore, because that's not being a good mom. You are not your symptoms. You do not need to define yourself by your physical capacity. We never did this before, but somehow when you have a diagnosis, again, it becomes the foremost thing. And we start thinking about all the things that we cannot do. And again, that goes back to that mentality of, well, I can't do this, I can't do that, I can't do this, I can't do that, because I have this, and I have this, and I have this, and I have this. So we list our symptoms, and then we list all the things that we can't do. And well, let me tell you, when you only list the things you can't do, it really limits your capacity to even think of what you can do. And when we talk negatively about ourselves, we often pick on really concrete things. And that's what we're going to kind of get into when we start talking about our suffering and we start talking about our values, is that when we talk about negative things, we like to be really, really specific. But when we talk about the good things, they often aren't concrete and they're not tangible. And maybe that's why they're a little harder to latch onto. So absolutely recognize your diagnosis and absolutely recognize the barriers. It's like knowing, you must stand behind this line. It's like how we go through life when we're driving, is we have these rules of the road. We have to stop at red lights. We have to slow down in school zones. We have to follow the speed limit because it's for our own safety. It's for our own health. But how we drive and the rules of the road do not decide who we are. They are things that guide us and kind of manage our behavior, and they keep us safe if we do that. They do not define the person that we are. And one of the ones that I find the most useful that you can take with you from this moment forward, and realistically, I'm not kidding, I will say it today, and you can feel free to correct me and you can call me out on it. I'm happy to have that. Is we often, once people have a diagnosis, we say, well, I used to love hiking, but now I have IPF and I can't hike anymore. I used to enjoy going to a dance, but now I can't do that anymore because I get too tired, or I'm worried that I'll run out of oxygen. I used to really like camping. I was a camper and I was all about backcountry camping, but now I just stay at home all the time. We know this from the minute you've ever had somebody turn you down for an invitation, when they say, thank you so much for the invitation. It means so much to me, but it doesn't matter what they just said. The minute they say, but I can't make it, you've forgotten everything they said before the word but. Everything before the word but is generally garbage and you have tossed it aside. Instead of using the word but, use the word and. Because let's be honest, both statements are true. It's not one is now no longer true and the new one is true. It's they are both there. So instead of saying something like, I used to really enjoy backcountry camping, but now I just stay at home. You could say to yourself, or in conversation, catching yourself when you do it, I used to really enjoy backcountry camping, and now I just stay at home more. That changes the whole meaning of that sentence. It kind of highlights something that was a part of you that you haven't accessed in a while. And it makes you go, why am I not doing that? Or I would like to get back to that. It really highlights options. And it also recognizes that concept of you were not no one before, and now you're only the diagnosis. You're that person who loved backcountry camping, and now you kind of stay at home. I used to love going to work out and doing exercise, and now I can't because I just get too tired. So maybe there's options there, and it changes this finite kind of hard no that we shut down about who we were, and it uses it in the context of who we are now and the challenges we're facing. And it definitely sounds kinder to yourself. So I will say but at some point today, and you guys can totally call me out on it. I will catch myself. But now that I've said this, you will start seeing it, and just notice when you say it, how it can really change, not only the change in how you see that phrase yourself, but also when you're talking to others. So when you're telling somebody, I really appreciate that invitation, and I would love to go, and I can't make it. It means that there's options there. There's an alternative. It doesn't make you feel like, oh, okay, whatever, they just don't want to come. So it can change how you interact with others as well. So this is the part where I'm going to ask you guys to think of all the terrible things that go on for you, all the things that make your life more challenging after a diagnosis. It could be physical, it could be emotional, it could be that irritability, it could be pain. I want you to think about all of those things, totally permission, no judgment. I'm asking you to do it. Think of all these terrible things. Now, the next thing I want you to do is, usually they say, write an epitaph. So here lies Elisabeth. And then I would go on to say something about myself. She worked too much and ended up missing out on a ton of really good things that she should have done because she was too busy sitting at a computer. I don't think epitaph is the right sentiment. I know that's kind of where ACT goes, but I'm going to say, instead of an epitaph, let's do something more interesting. You could make it like a tweet about yourself, about who you are when you are having your worst day. It could be a Facebook statement, Facebook status. How about an Instagram post or a story? No, wait. Well, hey, let's just, like, if it was a Tinder profile, any one of those you want to do, LinkedIn, Tinder, Facebook, whatever. Imagine you were writing your profile statement about who you are when you are in the worst state. That person that you are like, I hate today? Who is that? I'm now asking you to pay attention to the present moment. Just what did you notice? Did you change your posture a little? Did you sink a little bit in your chair? If you were smiling, is it gone? Do you feel some emotion coming up there? Whatever emotion it is, just own that. It's where you are. So what we're doing right now and asking you to sit in that state is not saying, here, just accept it. That's who you are now. Nope. No, acceptance as a concept is not about saying it will never change. It's about accepting where you are right now. So like I said, it's not about trying to get rid of that feeling, which some of you might be like, frick, turn off this presentation. This girl is garbage. She's just making it really heavy and dark. No. Please don't. This is about not pushing it away, not running away, not pretending it isn't there. It's about saying, okay, here I am. Now, what am I going to do about it? It's learning to adapt and saying, I'm not going to let this heaviness, this sadness sit with me. It's about saying, no, I got to figure out a way to say, this is going to be there. This is here. It's sitting there right next to me, but it's going to be something that I can have as a buddy that's next to me. It's not going to control me. So how can I make some of those changes? So it's about recognizing where you are and the reality of your situation. Now we're going to talk about our values. So values are a great thing that we can kind of say are the compass that is guiding your life. These are intangible things that will never, ever, ever be accomplished. So I am going to pick, since I already talked about my 6-year-old a couple of times, I'm going to pick being a good parent. Apparently, once you're a parent, it doesn't stop. You can't just turn that off. You have to keep doing it. Like, I was so excited because, they say like the challenge in the first year of life, that's like the most likely time. There's so many things you need to do to keep your baby alive. I was so happy when I kept him alive for the first year. And then I found out, oh my God, I have to keep doing this. And apparently, even once they leave the house, even if they move away, you still want to be a good parent, even though they're not on your roof anymore. So values are those things that you will never, ever achieve, whether it might be success. It might be ambition. It might be respect, integrity. It might be being compassionate or empathic. It might be successful. It could be a lot of things, being loving, being caring. It could be related to your community, to your family, to your greater peers. It could be to the world, to the environment. It could be your spiritual place. You never stop working towards it. And this is where we should be investing our energy. This is really what is meant to be that compass that tells us where we're supposed to be going. So thinking about those things that are really important to you. We're going to go back to your epitaph. Oh, wait, nope. We're going to do it for our Tinder, LinkedIn, Facebook, whatever profile, Twitter we want to do. Think about the person you want to be in every way. So those things that you'll never, ever stop working towards, you want to be remembered for, that you want to leave with people. I'm okay with people knowing that I'm so incredibly passionate about my work that I make it a priority. I want my son to see me be successful and resilient. I never want to stop learning or traveling or experiencing the world, and I want to make time for that. And I want to laugh so hard that I have to ask people to stop because something bad might happen. Those are my values. Now, they can change, they can grow. What I'm going to ask you to do, if you have a piece of paper in front of you, or you can kind of do it in your mind or do this later at another time, is I'm going to ask you on the right side of the sheet of paper. I like doing it horizontally, but you can do it vertically. It's totally fine. I'm going to list all the things that make it hard. Going back to that first thing, all those things that make us suffer. You know, I'm too tired, I'm too broke, I'm too lazy, I'm too fatigued, I'm in too much pain, I'm too depressed, I don't have energy, all of those things. And then on the other side, on the left side, I want you to put your values. And I want you to say those things that you aspire to be. I want to be loving. I want to be engaged with my friends. I want to be social. I want to be caring. I want to, whatever those might be, I want you to put those on the left. Now, I want you to see, again, going to that and versus but. These are not two separate polar opposites, that you are either one or the other. It is a spectrum. So draw that line between the two and ask yourself, on this spectrum of where I'm sitting right now, am I surrounded more by things that are related to my suffering, that are creating a struggle? Or can I pick up on things that are related to moving towards my values? So being really honest with yourself, where are you on that line in your life right now? And just put an X there. So this is not, again, this is not to be daunting or to be Debbie Downer. No offense to anyone named Debbie. It's just to do that piece around acceptance, to go, oh, crap, this isn't where I want to be. And then recognizing that every single day we have had options throughout our day that we can let be driven by the things that create our suffering, or they can be created, or they can help us move towards our values and away from that suffering. And the way we do that is by basically choosing things, choosing those little actions. So for instance, if there's someone that keeps calling to check in to see how you're doing, and you just feel like, I know they're going to ask me about what's going on. I know they're going to ask me about how I'm doing, and I'm so tired about talking about it. But at the same time, you want to be social, and you want to be a good friend, a good family member, a good sister, a good mom, a good brother, whatever it might be. And you don't call them because you just don't want to talk about it, because you don't want to focus on it. You don't want to keep thinking about how much it sucks. That's one choice. And if you choose that X will move a little bit closer to that suffering. However, you might choose to pick up the phone and call them, and they're going to be excited to hear your voice. And that excitement is going to be a little bit contagious. And when they say, so how are things? Like, how's it going? You can just say, you know, it's going, we're working through it, you know, we're taking it as it comes, whatever. You can have a canned statement. We call them pocket statements in what I do. So to just kind of like shut people down. And then you can say, what's going on with you? Or bring up a totally different topic. Like, did you see what happened on Dancing with the Stars? I'm trying to think of something. And that moves a little towards your values. And every time you make those little decisions, they don't have to be huge. I was saying, you know, if I go into work and I'm miserable and I'm grumbly, if I walk in and I smile at someone and they smile back at me, wow. Like immediately, that one little action of smiling at someone or being nice to someone when you're out in public, when maybe you don't have to be, even though you may not be feeling it. Those little actions can move us a little closer to our values and a little closer to our values. And me shutting my laptop and writing a letter to the tooth fairy with my son last night was me saying, even though I have work to do, I do want to be a good mom, and this work isn't that important right now. So I'm moving that towards our values. Now, the same thing is also true though. So I use the comparison of going to the gym. If you know you're supposed to exercise, we all know that. Nobody here thinks we're not supposed to exercise. But if we know that we're supposed to try and stay as active as we can, and that's one of the values, but we feel tired, lazy, unmotivated, low energy, we have pain, we have anxiety, we have distress, we're just feeling overwhelmed. Those are all things that drag us towards our suffering. And let's say you just say, you know what, I'm going to go for a walk, and I'm going to go on Friday. It's not today. It's not right now. I'm going to go. You've already made a shift because you've made that choice. You've made that commitment to action. And maybe, you'd enjoy it more if someone was with you. So maybe you ask someone to go for a walk with you. Now you've made it an experience. Now it's not just you getting active, but now it's you actually connecting with someone else too. That's great. And maybe when you actually go on the walk, you guys talk about stuff that's really important. Maybe you do share some of those hardships or the struggles that you've had. And you're being open to that, and you're sitting with that. And that's part of the experience. And you've taken all these little steps that move you towards your values. And you can look back and go, wow, I did that. Because again, when you're mindful, it means you're also evaluating that, wow, that choice turned out okay. We're checking we're actually doing good things. Or if you have a day where you're just like, today is not the day. Today is a terrible day. You're not going to judge it. You're not going to hurt yourself. You're not going to beat yourself up for it. You're not going to shit all over yourself for it. You're going to say, today is not the day that I can exercise. I'm not going to do it today. I'm going to reschedule it. I'm going to do it tomorrow. You are making a decision that while it might seem like you're moving towards your suffering, the difference is it is a choice. And it doesn't kind of become a slippery slope where you can't change it. You recognize tomorrow I can make a different choice. And the other part is that when you do decide tonight, I'm not going to work out, I'm not going to exercise, I'm going to sit on the couch, I'm going to binge watch. I was watching The Boys on Amazon Prime. I'm going to sit here and I'm going to binge watch The Boys and not exercise. And you know what? I'm going to enjoy it, because I'm making it a choice. So even when you have those days where you feel like you can't do something, you can make a choice, or you can say, I'm going to go on a shorter walk, or I'm going to maybe do it later in the day. But you can do those things, but it's still a choice, which makes you feel like you have more control. And the minute you have more control, you are going to have less of that emotional, overwhelming sensation. Pain is inevitable. Suffering is optional. Now, there's another version of this by Tim Hansel where he expands on it and he says, you cannot avoid pain. You can avoid joy. And all those times when you're trying to avoid the pain, if it really means you are leaning into the pain and moving away from the joy, that's what we need to shift. So the commitment to action part of ACT is that we have to, no matter how small, we need to own it. We need to own it. And no shame. Like I said, I'm not going to feel bad about the day that I do nothing but binge watch The Boys and eat food I shouldn't be eating. Oh, I should all over myself there. Food that I want to eat, guilt-free. Mindfully experience it and then evaluate it. Say to yourself, how did that work out for me? You might feel kind of, if I ate all the food, like I love black licorice, if I ate tons of black licorice the next day, I don't feel fantastic. Or maybe you have Kentucky Fried Chicken or something like that you're kind of like, oof. Notice how you feel when you're doing it. Notice how you feel afterwards. And after you went and did that walk with a friend that you kind of had to plan, and you've been thinking about it and what you did, all the times you thought about it, but you didn't do it, you beat yourself up over it. And the time you actually did it, yeah, how did that make me feel? Fun fact to know and tell, people think motivation always comes before an action. It doesn't. Motivation usually happens after we do something and we go, wow, that was pretty wicked. I'm really glad I did that. That feeling is good. I recognize that. I'm going to own that. I'm going to do that again. So let your actions move you towards your values. Let yourself have those choices. And even if sometimes that choice is something that you know is not the best for you, but it's what you want right now, own it and don't feel bad about it. Sometimes I like making waffles with tons of whipped cream and syrup because it's my son's favorite food. And I know I shouldn't eat that every day because it's not good for my cholesterol. And I love our waffle mornings. So values of the compass, actions and choices are our checkpoints where we have to evaluate ourselves. Because a lot of people, when I see people, they'll say to me, I'm miserable, I'm unhappy, I have pain, I have this condition, and it's just taken over my life. And here's how I manage it. Because when I say, well, what do you do to manage it? They say, well, these are all the things that I don't do. And I'm like, wow, okay. And those you think that's going to help? Yeah. So how's that working for you? Well, I don't know what else to do. That's the shift we're trying to make. You do not drown by falling into water. You drown by staying there. So what you can hopefully start to realize is that regardless of the pulmonary fibrosis, which is going to be there, let's not ever, ever, ever pretend like it is not. And even if you do have a lung transplant, there's a whole other bunch of conditions and follow-ups that you need to maintain. So you can't ever act like it's gone. You have to act like it's there and it's with you. It does not have to own it though. And it is not you, because you also have a whole bunch of other things that you can find to fulfill that space that can live alongside of it. So I'm going to tell you guys a little quick story, because I was diagnosed with cancer in 2019, and it was tongue cancer. And it's hilarious because my friend told me, my friend who's my dentist, she came over to my house and I said to her, is this a wine conversation? And she said, yes, this is a wine conversation. And she said, you have cancer. And I was like, okay. That night, I was like, I can't, I went to the dark place and I'm going to die, and my son's going to grow up without a son, and my husband's going to have no partner, and all of that stuff. And then I was like, I can't, I need something to look forward to. I need something to look forward to. I need to tap into those values, because that is how I'm going to get through having cancer. So I booked 3 holidays in one day. That's right. That's what happens when you have a lot of wine. I texted my best friends and I said, guess what, guys, I have cancer. And they all were incredibly supportive. One of them started crying, and 2 of them said, I'll be there right away. I surrounded myself with those people, and I booked 3 holidays, one weekend, girls' weekend in Canmore, one to Minneapolis, where I used to go to grad school and I have some friends there, but I know they'd also take care of me, and one to Hawaii. I booked an oceanfront suite in Hawaii at the Fairmont Orchid. And you know what? Anything is cheap when you get diagnosed with cancer. Let me just put that out there. When it did come time for that trip, I was like, oof, I went all out. So again, drinking probably wasn't the healthiest thing I could have done that night. Probably, if I'm a psychologist, that wasn't what I'd tell people, is get drunk when you find out you have bad news. I did those things and I owned it. But it was also my way. And it was also my way of ensuring I had my values close to me, because that is what's going to help me get through how the hell am I going to get through having cancer? And when I went and got diagnosed officially from my oral surgeon, he said to me, you know, most people with tongue cancer, when you lose your tongue, you are going to have to learn how to talk again. And most people can still communicate. And I said, most people can still communicate. Do you know what I do for a living? And he said, you shouldn't worry about work right now. You should just tell them you're going to need a lot of time off. And all I kept thinking is, there goes my whole career. I have a career where I literally talk for a living, and he just decimated it and told me what I can't do. And I did make it a goal. I made it a goal. I asked my my ENT surgeon, I said, I'm going to, I still want to teach. Am I going to be able to do that? And he said, yeah, it's going to hurt a lot. There's no reason you can't though. So I set a goal for myself to teach a course on trauma and how to work with people with trauma. And I did it 6 weeks after I had a very large piece of my tongue removed. And I didn't sound great. And it did really, really hurt. it also contributed to me still being able to be here in front of you guys today, still managing to do this despite having had this terrible disease, and hashtag cancer free for the time being. So those who have a why to live can bear with almost any how. It's a great quote. It's from Viktor Frankl. He was in a concentration camp, and he had to figure out, how is it that even in a concentration camp there were people who could be compassionate and kind and care about each other, and it helped them to survive. And he did this, and he wrote a book called Man's Search for Meaning and invented a treatment called logotherapy. This is all about reconnecting with your why. And a lot of times we get so caught up in our day-to-day and worrying about the future and ruminating about what happened to us in an unhealthy way, that we forget who we are and why we're here. So I'm going to let someone else say this best, but what I want you guys to take away is that your story did not end with your diagnosis, because you were not the story, you were the storyteller. So I'm going to turn on this clip by Tabitha Brown.
But this came to me, and I said, well, let me share. All right, and I hope that this falls on the right ears, and it gives you some relief and helps you to your freedom, okay? We all go through things, yes. And some of us get stuck while going through. But I want you to focus on the word through. We go through things. Things don't happen to you, they happen through you. When you get stuck, it's because you have decided to take your story and become the story. You forget that you're not the story, baby. You're the storyteller. You go through it, and then you have a story to tell. You're not the story. You're the storyteller. Do you get that? You have to embrace the fact that things are going to happen, but it didn't happen to you. It happened through you. But you're the storyteller, not the story. You get through it. Tell your story. Don't sit in it. Don't feel heavy because you feel like this is who I am. No, it's not. It happened, but you're going to tell the story. You're going to get through it, okay? That's it. I hope that blesses you, and I hope that you get it. I love you. Go about your business, baby. Have the most amazing night, honey, and tomorrow have yourself a good day. But even if you can't have a good one, don't you dare go mess up nobody else's here. Talk to y'all later. Bye.
Let me just quickly go back here. So I want you guys to go and tell your story, because I feel like one of the things we often forget to do is tell that story. We talk a lot about the symptoms and the diagnosis and the treatments. People don't want to hear about your treatments. They want to hear about you. You need to hear about you, and you need to tell that story. You moved towards your values of wanting to still be the storyteller in your own life by just being in this space and being here. Honor that. Give yourself credit for that, because you guys got this.
Dr. Saxton, that was an awesome presentation. Thank you so much. I think you left our audience that's speechless. I know it's given me a lot of food for thought. But we do have some basic things that we would like to ask you, because you did say you were the national director, so maybe you would be able to help us with some of these questions. First of all, is it difficult to get access to mental health resources?
Oh, that's such a loaded question. Yes and no. I would say you need to get access to the mental health resources that you have available to you. There are some really great resources that are available in different provinces through Mind Beacon, which are available to everyone. And it's a really good entryway that if you start to feel like you're slipping, so maybe not that you're really, really low, because you don't have to wait until it's that bad. You can wait until you just start noticing I'm having like, I don't feel good a lot of days. And sometimes when that mindfulness practice kicks in, that's what you start noticing is not all my days are good. I'm not as happy as I used to be. And when you notice it early on, go to the mind beacons or the mind space, headspace. What is the other one I'm missing? If you're working, a lot of the EAP providers are available to you, and it's short-term counseling, but it's based in real principles of usually CBT, and that is effective. Acceptance and commitment therapy is actually considered the third wave of CBT, so it is a kind of an updated version of CBT. So that's accessible. Workers can go through EAP. A lot of people can access the free resources in your province. I know Mind Beacon has done a lot in Quebec, Ontario to be free and available to everyone. Reach out. There are apps out there which are effective. My caution is this: just because it says it helps your mental health doesn't mean it will. So be a savvy consumer. Look for that it's based in evidence, that it's best practice. So if you are going to seek out someone, make sure it's a regulated mental health professional. And now the good thing, if there's a good thing of COVID, and like what we're doing today is a great example, it is accessible virtually. So you don't have to be limited to who you can see in person. And when what we do know is that the research has shown that whether over the phone or through texting or doing it virtually, it's equally effective. So go and access it. But I know it's expensive to seek out individual services. I believe in Nova Scotia, they are moving towards having it under provincial healthcare. And hopefully, if all goes well, it'll be across the country like that and not too far.
Great. Thank you. And someone want to know, do you always need a referral from your family doctor to see a psychiatrist or a psychologist?
To see a psychiatrist, yes, generally you do have to have a referral to see a psychiatrist. I will take this moment to make a distinction between psychologists and psychiatrists, and then I'm going to talk a little bit about different disciplines that are also regulated in mental health across the country. People think psychiatrists prescribe medication and psychologists don't, and that's like the big distinguishing factor. Psychiatrists do have the capacity to prescribe. They are physicians, they are medical doctors, and they have a specialty in terms of psychological functioning and psychological disorders. They tend to be more clinical, and yeah, they have a tendency towards reviewing medications and looking at those types of interventions, which often a good place to start is at your family doctor, and they'll decide if it's needed. So you might think I need to see a psychiatrist. Before you ask for that, have a conversation about why. Because there's a lot of support for family physicians now in supporting making recommendations for medications and also accessing primary care networks that might be available to you. Psychologists are also very good at assessment. There's a lot of psychological testing that psychologists do that psychiatrists don't. We are very specifically trained in that. So if you want to have an assessment, you don't need a referral to see a psychologist unless it's within a setting. So sometimes if you're in a program at a hospital where you're going to rehabilitation, maybe it is specifically for the pulmonary fibrosis, ask. They may have psychologists available as part of the treatment team since interdisciplinary care is prominent. Maybe it will be virtual, but asking if that's available to you. Now, you also have capacity to access other regulated mental health professionals. In Atlantic Canada, there are registered counseling therapists. In Ontario, it is psychotherapists, and they are under a college as well. In British Columbia, it is registered clinical counselors. For Alberta, it really is only psychologists that are regulated. The other ones are not. So again, be a savvy consumer. A psychotherapist in Alberta is not a regulated profession, but in Ontario it is. So know who you're going to see, and know that there's also, that's intended to protect you. So know that you're going to see someone who has a list of standards that they have to follow.
Thank you, Dr. Saxton. I want to thank you so much for your presentation today. It's been really refreshing, and I know that our audience are probably going to walk away and think about some of these things that you've suggested. And I want to remind everyone that this video will be available by this Friday so that you can come back and listen, because I know most of us won't remember a lot of the things, but we'll want to go back and go, gosh, what did Dr. Saxton say about that? And so come back, visit us at cpff.ca, and we'll have it there. Thank you again.
Thanks, guys.